All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Assemble. My name is High Ruler, and let me tell you, I've recorded this about 5 different times. So hopefully, this time, if you're seeing this take, this is the 5th time, and we got it right. So, with that being said, I'm here today to talk about my 2021 wish list for Avengers. And if you guys have been following my stream or my Twitter, you guys know I started off and I wanted to kind of do 21 things I wanted in 2021 for the game. And I kind of went back on that one only because when I was thinking about it, 21 things doesn't really give me a lot of time to really go in depth and talk about the reasons why I'm kind of advocating for some of these things. So I thought about it and I was like, do I want to do something that's a mile wide or an inch deep? Or do I want to do something that is, an inch wide but a mile deep, so to speak? So I decided to kind of tailor it and kind of come up with 11 things that allow me to go into detail and kind of talk about some things in more in depth. And with that being said, these are the things that I would like to see in 2021. All right, so number one on the list doesn't necessarily mean it's my most wanted, but it's just kind of the first one I came up with. And obviously, for a lot of people, this might be number one on their list. It is crossplay. I think this goes without any further explanation. Crossplay is something that we all want, and it's something that we all really desperately want implemented. I think one of the issues that I've probably talked about many times on my stream and speculated on is crossplay is probably more like a contractual issue than more a technical one. And I think a lot of it may come down to do with Spider-Man. Is Spider-Man able to be seen on Xbox, PC, Stadia, or is Spider-Man only something that PS4 players can interact with? What comes with Spider-Man? Do bosses come with Spider-Man? Do mission locations come with Spider-Man? How much of that in a crossplay scenario can Xbox players play on or PC players play on? That's all speculation, of course, but I imagine that might be the biggest issue with crossplay, which is why we haven't really seen it. But they have kind of talked about it in that K War table. So it'll be interesting to see what we get with crossplay, if we get crossplay, and how we get crossplay. So number one on the list is crossplay for me. Number two is cross saves. So cross saves is when you can take your saved character and you can move them across to different platforms. If you guys are familiar with Destiny 2, Destiny 2 does this. Now I'm also going to put cross save with server side saves. Obviously, they do go kind of hand in hand, for example. But one of the things that server side saves allow you to do is it allows you to kind of eliminate the local saves, which could eliminate a lot of bugs, a lot of issues that we saw when the game launched, leading up to, I guess maybe like a month and a half ago, maybe a month ago, people were still kind of having issues with that. So definitely when your saves are all kind of on server side, it definitely can cause or definitely can take away some causes of issue. Server side saves allow you to eliminate trainers and eliminate save editing, which happens with the game. So if you guys are familiar with save editing is the kind of, you take your save game, you kind of edit it around, and you can kind of give yourself max items, max power, max comic book. You can kind of give yourself everything that you want within the boundary that the game provides. So you're kind of skipping over the grind or the part of the game that you're supposed to do in order to make it to the end. I don't know how far save editing goes. Like I don't know if you can do it from like a PlayStation or an Xbox. So you can take those saves and do it. But I know that definitely on PC you can do it. So server side saves and then the implementation of cross save. One of the, I guess, side effects, if you want to call it a side effect, is that you'd be able to kind of eliminate these things, the save editing and trainers, for example. All right, so next on the list are more iconic locations. I think one of the things that the game is missing is iconic locations such as Asgard, Avengers Tower, Avengers Mansion. I think when you think about an Avengers game, you think about you think about characters, villains, locations, right? Those three things are like the main thing on everybody's list. So as more characters come in, as more villains come in, we need more locations, whether they're social spaces or mission spaces. I think one of the things that we do need is we need to kind of revisit or visit in some cases these things that really tie us to the mythos and the world of Avengers and Marvel in general. And I think that's one of the things they're really going to have to start pushing, because, it's cool to have a helicarrier. It's cool to kind of have these shield bases and everything like that. But it would be really cool to have Avengers Tower. And, I don't know how they're going to do it. Maybe we do a mission where we kind of fight aim off and take Avengers Tower back. But one of the things that they do need to do is they need to implement Avengers Tower. Asgard would be super cool, maybe tie it into a Loki storyline. Maybe you got to go do something, fight Loki in Asgard, and maybe you do something like that, or maybe Asgard just shows up and you can go there or whatever. Like, I don't know how they're going to implement it, but I think one of the things that they do need to implement is iconic locations that we really can enjoy and really take advantage of in the game itself. Okay, so next on the list are more iconic villains. So I can't remember who said this, but it was either Scott or Phil had said that when it comes to villains, they don't necessarily need a story or like a DLC update to be implemented into the game, which I would really like to see them kind of, follow through on that statement. I really think that this game, and I'm sure lots of people in the community will echo these words, that the game needs more villains to fight. You play an Avengers game, you want to fight Avengers level villains. You just want to fight Marvel villains in general, right? Like, it is a game that is ripe for that kind of play. It is a game that is meant for that kind of play. And, I think I'm going to speak for myself and maybe some others here, but when it comes to adding these villains, they don't necessarily need new boss fight rooms or new location rooms. No, don't get me wrong, those would be great. But if it came down to I have to wait, a few months to get a new location for these boss fights, versus they can put the boss in the game in an existing location, run it through a villain sector rotation, and then the new location comes in a few months, I think I would take the first one rather than the second one, right? So what I would like to see are more iconic villains and more just kind of super villains in general for us to fight. And I'll kind of talk about villains in the next update, in the next part too, because one of the things that I would really like to see from villains are unique boss drops. If you guys are familiar with Destiny 1, you guys will know that Destiny 1, you would grind bosses over and over again for certain items that drop straight from the boss. And this is the perfect segue into the loot gear update that I would like to see in 2021 as well. So they've also talked about a loot gear update. They talked about tweaking gear, reworking gear. And one of the things that my personal opinion about gear is that, unfortunately, the gear just doesn't go far enough. When you think about Destiny, Division, Anthem, what are you chasing mostly? Guns, right? If you didn't answer guns, the door, you can walk out of it. When you play these games, you're chasing guns, right? You're chasing these unique guns with different abilities, different stat rules, so on and so forth. What we're missing in Avengers are the guns. So what we're doing is we're chasing these item pieces that really, for the most part, all they're really differing is percentage rolls from each other, right? So I want. It's tough because, like, how far do I want this rework to go for loot? I think at the base level, I want items that have different effects, different status effects. I want exotics that kind of break the game in a fun way, right? I mean, exotics need to be exotic for a reason, right? The thing is now, how do I say this? I don't really want to make people mad, but I think the thing is like, exotics have become very easy to get. And the problem with the exotics being easy to get is that exotics aren't really different from what we're getting in like the legendary version, for example. So if exotics become more sophisticated, their design switches up, they become very different from what we're getting now. I would hope that like the grind to get an exotic changes as well. Maybe call them a different tier than exotic. Maybe you keep the tiers, and then after exotic you create another one called exalted or something, right? But I think definitely there needs to be gear that totally breaks the game in a fun way or has perks that are very different. I think the whole loot system needs to be reworked. You need set bonuses. You need stuff that really kind of synergizes well. You need stuff that isn't just kind of percentage roll differences on different pieces of gear. You need gear that kind of amplifies your character's different abilities. Um, you know, and they're sort of there in certain ways. In certain ways they're not sort of there. But the problem is, as I kind of alluded to earlier, without weapons to really grind for, they really need to take the existing gear system that they have now and really make the perks on these item pieces really substantial, right? So instead of grinding for like a I don't know, give me a gun on Destiny, the Whisper of the Worm, right? Or something in that sense. They need to kind of make your all these different item pieces have something different about them, something broken about them, something that is very unique to that certain piece, and then try to scatter them around, and then hopefully through the grinding, through everything else, you come up with this very different and synergized build that really kind of plays into the sort of characteristics and sort of the character that you want. And it feels like right now they're sort of there, but they're not really all the way there. You get a different piece, and really what you're doing is you're just really comparing percentage rolls and everything else. And in a lot of ways, it's not fun. The loot system and the gear system doesn't really inspire the fun that I would want from a game like this, right? So they definitely need to start doing stuff like that. They definitely need to start, instead of playing within the four walls that they've kind of cornered themselves in, kind of expand past those and see what else is out there. Take some risks with the loot system. Try something different. If you have an item that kind of breaks the game in a way, I mean, okay, like take it out or rework or whatever, but at least you're out there trying. At least you're out there kind of doing something different. And right now, we're not really seeing a lot of different. We're seeing them kind of inch their way to different kind of endings here. But I really want them with the new loot system to go out there and really just hammer home that, like, this is the new loot system. This is how different it's going to be. Let's go at it. Let's do this. Let's do that. So hopefully when we get the new loot gear system, it's different. It's out there. We have interesting items with interesting perks that have interesting kind of synergies with each other. And hopefully we get more stuff like that, man. Hopefully. All right, so next on the list is more multiplayer content. So one of the things I've talked about before is that the game has done a really good job at catering to both a single player and a multiplayer audience all at once. You have your single player kind of storyline, and then the game opens up into a more multiplayer, portion, but still allowing single players, sounds weird, to kind of experience the same kind of mission design and kind of everything going on with the back half of the game, through like AIs and stuff like that. But one of the things that I really think they're going to have to kind of lean into now is kind of player retention, which comes through multiplayer kind of aspects of the game rather than single player aspects of the game. So one of the ways that they're going to have to do this, they're going to have to lean into what I'm calling like the 4 pillars of multiplayer play for Marvel's Avengers. So that are villain sectors, Omega level threats, Cloney Labs, and raids. So when we talk Cloney Labs, I'm going to talk Cloney Labs in a second, but also dungeon experiences as well. Okay, but let's start with villain sectors. So villain sectors can be tied into when I talked about villains, for example. If a villain gets dropped into a game, reuse an existing location, put him into the rotation of villain sectors, but give us more villains that we can fight, which it seems that they are doing. Obviously, MODOK, Super Adaptoid, are definitely going to be villain sectors. So you want to see that kind of continue with new guys too as well that are being dropped into the game. Next, we'll talk about Omega level threats. So the thing about Omega level threats, guys, is when I think about Omega level threats, I think about like bosses and battles that aren't just kind of like a spank and tank, for example. So for spank and tank, basically, is just kind of you stand there and you tank the damage, but you're still doing a shit ton of damage to the boss as well, right? But if Omega level threats are part of their end game kind of design or their gameplay loop, then they need to have unique mechanics and to really challenge the players in ways that we haven't been challenged thus far, whether that's through difficulty, mechanics, puzzles, teamwork, coordination. There's got to be ways that they're gonna have to make Omega level threats really mean something, and the more that they can make Omega level threats mean something, and to kind of implement new kind of coordination tactics, mechanics, and stuff like that, will really allow them to kind of tout that as one of their end game kind of experiences. but they really need to lean on these and kind of make them challenging for the players that really want to take on that challenge. And obviously, when we talk mega level threats, you know, we got to talk about scaling. You know, will a 4-player group run into the same difficulty as a two-man group, or a 3-man group, or, you know, what's going to be the difficulty scaling on these kind of missions, right? So when we talk omega level threats, we got to really kind of hone in on the difficulty and the mechanics and the challenges of them, because we want them to be meaningful, but we also want them to be fun as well, right? But I think omega level threats, they're going to need a lot of them. They're going to need to make sure that what they come out with is quality. You know, obviously I talk about quantity, but quality is where they're going to really have to shine on these ones. And hopefully when we finally get our hands on Super Adaptoid, we're really going to kind of see what they kind of put forward in an omega level threat mission, and we're really going to get to hone in on and understand where endgame is going with this game. And when we speak about endgame, there's one thing that we do need to talk about, and that is Cloney Labs. So Cloney Labs is interesting because one of the things that I wrote down for Cloney Labs is to be continuously updated with different villains, puzzles, and alterations to the room layout. So one of the things that, if you guys aren't following Miller, I believe Miller tweeted out a voice clip where it sounds like MODOK is being cloned. So it sounds like MODOK can be a villain for the Cloney Labs. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. But you know, I'm going to be honest with you. If Cloney Labs is going to be their key dungeon experience, I don't really care for the in-universe stories around Cloney Labs. Throw in 4 Taskmasters, 4 MODOKs, 4 Maestros. Like, I don't particularly care at that point, because I just want Cloney Labs to be, if it's going to be like the premier dungeon experience in the game, I want there to be enough content to be valued at the premier dungeon experience, right? But if Cloney Labs is only going to be one of many dungeon-like experiences, then, I mean, I'm not going to particularly get fussy over it. But it all depends on like what their goal of Cloney Labs is, right? Is it omega level threats, Cloney Labs raid, or is it like omega level threats, dungeon-like experiences which include Cloney Labs and then a raid, right? So it all depends on like what their interpretation and their goal of Cloney Labs is. And then once that's clear, then we can really start figuring out, you know, as a community, what do we want out of Cloney Labs, right? Do we want it to be the same run every single time? Or do we want different villains? Do we want different puzzles? Do we want different room layouts? Do we want different, like, do we want a new experience every time you load in? Or are we okay with just the same one every single time? And I'm going to be honest with you, I want a different one every single time. I don't want the same one every single time. But that's just me. That's something I want Cloney Labs to be. And this is on my personal wish list for 2021. All right. So next, our raids. Let me just say that for raids, I'm not really going to talk about anything to do with the mechanics of a raid. I'm not really going to talk about, you know, kind of anything to do with kind of the inside of a raid, for example. What I'm going to talk about is the kind of community expectation for a raid and my expectation for a raid and what I'm really looking forward to from a raid itself. So when I think about raids in this game, I really want to focus in and hone in on the Destiny community again. Now, when a new raid comes out in the Destiny community, it's a spectacle. It's an event. Everyone is pumped for it. Everyone's excited. So when I think about a raid in the Avengers community, I want that kind of excitement. I want the races. I want the best of the best to achieve something. I want world first. I want people to celebrate world first. I want the community to gather around. Can we figure this out? Can we figure that out? I want streamers to be involved. I want different content creators to be involved. I want people in Discord chats talking about it. I want everyone to come around as a culmination of the community and really celebrate a good raid event. The problem is I kind of alluded to earlier when I talked about cross save and server side saves, is that when you have save editing, it can kind of invalidate your world first raid and your world first race, you know, for example. And I remember when the game came out, Gathalion, who is a popular content creator, if you guys aren't familiar with him, he streams on Facebook. He's one of the biggest Destiny content creators. He tweeted, and I'm going to paraphrase very loosely on this one, but he was talking about that the local saves invalidate the experience of a world first race when it comes to raids. And I think in order to kind of create the spectacle of the raids, they really need to hone in on the save editing, the trainers, and all sorts of stuff. Because as a community, you don't want to just exile the people on PC, you know? You don't want to be like, all right, guys, PC guys, later, dudes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to just cast them away. But even at the same point, too, I'm not too familiar with the save editing. I don't know if the save editing can even work on PlayStation or Xbox saves, for example, too. But I think if you kind of push the saves to the server side, you stop allowing the stuff to happen, you can kind of dial it back and be like, okay, now that we fix this, can we make our raid a community event? Can we bring everybody together? As long as the raids are good and they're fun, they're challenging, they provide a way for teams to coordinate, to communicate. Everyone has fun together. I think the raid will do well. But I think for the raid to go to that next step, I think you need to really look at how do we provide like a competitive integrity to the race? How do we provide a kind of an environment where people can go about, trying to win this race, or how can we provide a way to kind of allow the community to kind of take this next step together. And I hope Crystal Dynamics looks at this and they say, yeah, this is something we need to do, because I think personally this is a net benefit. I don't think there's anyone out here, and if there is, I'd love to hear your comments down below, where you don't want server side saves. You just want your save on your local console or your PC, and that's it. I'd love to know why, because I think what we've seen over the past few months, it seems like a lot of issues would have been remedied by having saves on the servers instead of our local consoles. But I mean, I don't know. I would love to hear what you guys think about that one in particular, about raids and kind of cross save and server side saves and all that stuff in general, because I think you can't really have a good world first raid without looking at the saves and the save situation and looking to provide some sort of competitive integrity for the people who want to race for that. All right, so next is the harm room. So the harm room right now isn't really getting a lot of love. You go in there weekly, you kind of get your comic book, and then you're out. My idea for the harm room that I would love to be implemented in 2021 is to include test dummies for us to see what kind of damage we're putting out. So this would mean that the test dummy is customizable. So you can add health, you can take away health, you can add status effects. You can customize the dummy as much as you can to kind of fit different profiles, to kind of fit the different, health numbers of a certain villain that you're trying to farm, and so on and so forth. This would allow us to kind of have a detailed full view of kind of our builds, and to allow us a quick way to kind of test things out with having to, run through, different missions and go up and kind of just farm a boss. It's very simple, very easy. And I think this would definitely be a great thing to implement for the game. Especially as, we start looking at gear reworks and we start looking at new characters, balancing characters. I think this is a very simple and easy way for people to kind of, test characters, test builds, and kind of get that information out there as quick as possible. So I'd like to see the harm room kind of changed and added, and, put some test dummies in there. Why not, All right, so next on the list are characters. So I'm not going to go out and list a bunch of characters, okay? Like, I think everyone has their favorite character they want to see in the game. Scarlet Witch fans, Doctor Strange fans, Ant-Man fans, Vision fans, Winter Soldier, Falcon, you name it. I'm sure there's a fan out there who wants to see them in the game. So instead of, pissing one of you guys off, I'm just going to say, when it comes to characters, I want characters that exploit niches that we haven't currently explored yet in the game. So for example, Kate Bishop was a high mobility character, and we didn't really have one like that. So when she came to the game, she was very much so a breath of fresh air. She provided like kind of she fit into a niche that wasn't already occupied. So I'd really like to see them kind of take characters and kind of find different roles for them to play within the existing roster, and really kind of exploit that. And for lack of a better word, is there like a super tanky character that you could provide, or you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a character designer, but what I really want to see is like characters that really kind of hone in on, a direction that isn't being explored right now, and really make that their own. Now, obviously, you got to take into consideration, game philosophy and character balance and mission balance and villain balance and all sorts of factors. But if they can make Kate Bishop a super mobile character, then my goal and sorry, goal, like I'm working on the game. My hope for 2021 is that we start seeing characters that really kind of break the game in fun ways and really kind of look to kind of do things very differently than what we have so far. Obviously, when you start talking about things like this, you start talking about power creep, for example. But ideally, when you bring a character in and a character does something super good, hopefully your existing characters already do something super well, so everyone has a character to play for different scenarios, or a character does something super well here, but this character does something super well there, so everyone has a role to play. So no one's really kind of better in one thing or better in all things than another character. Everyone has a role and a direction and stuff like that. So that's one of the things I'd like to see, more in 2021. One of the other things I'd like to see is that if the game is moving in a more multiplayer direction, then maybe evaluate the characters in a way that you start looking at filling certain roles, for example. And when I say roles, I mean the Holy Trinity. Do you want characters that act more like a tank? Do you want characters that act more like a healer? And I know right now, some characters have different abilities to kind of play into these roles. But like, how far do you want to lean into some of these characteristics, for example? So maybe this is an avenue they can explore, not necessarily implement, but explore kind of providing characters with more abilities, even to kind of heal your allies and do different things like that. Or maybe there's more kind of a way to be a tank and not just like taunt, but full on kind of tank different things and then items to really maximize that and stuff like that. So I really like to see them kind of explore character roles, character niches, and really find out what kind of direction they can really push some of these new characters in, just to provide a new way to play the game, essentially, and to kind of just, I think a lot of it comes down to is like team synergy. I think one of the things that could be really cool to explore is team synergy, depending on the mission you're playing, or different characters you're playing with different items, for example. How far can we really push that synergy, and how do we kind of maximize that, right? I think a good first step is kind of those abilities, right? You see the Iron Man and Captain America shield. That's a really cool first step. But like, how far can we push that? How far can they really take that idea and really kind of work it? Because I think one of the cool things is playing an Avengers game is that all the characters really work together. So how do you take that teamwork to the next step in terms of inside a mission, which is those abilities, and then outside a mission, which are different items or different abilities, that you can really start to really dig deep on synergizing these characters together. Okay, so next are costumes. So when I talk about costumes, we're going to talk about three things, or three different types of costumes. I'll talk about recolors at the end. So obviously the first one is I like to see more originally designed costumes from Crystal Dynamics, inspired by comic and MCU counterparts, but changed in their own artistic direction. I would really like to see Crystal Dynamics have that creative freedom to really tackle these characters in a way that makes sense for the universe that they're building, and kind of see what they come up with. Now, obviously, there's going to be some winners, there's going to be some losers, but if we're getting new costumes every week, I'd really like to see something original come up from them and see what kind of stuff they provide. The second one, obviously, is comic accurate costumes. Of course, as someone who has read comics and still reads comics, I really want to see, the characters from the pages come into the game. And some of that is definitely down to, comic accurate costumes. So I think that would be very cool for them to do. And it seems like every time they've done a comic accurate costume, their reception to it has been really well done. So I'd love to see them kind of keep going with that and to kind of implement more of those. And I'd love to see, what they could do with that. I think Superior Iron Man would be one of the ones I'd like to see. Just saying, if anyone at Crystal Dynamics is watching, hey, Superior Iron Man. Hydra Cap too would be kind of cool. Just saying. But for real, I mean, comic accurate costumes are probably at the top of the list, aside from maybe MCU costumes. These are probably going to be the ones that are going to roll out pretty frequently, I would imagine. Cross promotion is something Disney and Marvel are huge on. New TV show, new movie, get the character, get the costume in your games. So I would definitely think that cross promotion is coming. And I think probably the first step of that will be Black Widow. Maybe maybe Falcon, depending on like the on how things kind of roll out. But I think Black Widow is probably gonna be that first kind of MCU kind of cross promotion that we may get, and obviously more MCU accurate costumes would be super cool to have, and I hope to see more of those in the very near future. Um, so let me talk a little bit about recolors. Oh my goodness. Okay, recolors. I gotta sit up for this one, guys. I think when it comes to recolors, recolors shouldn't ever be in the marketplace sold for money. Point blank, I'm just gonna say it. I think recolors are a good way to kind of pad out patterns in the free tiers of the challenge cards, but I don't really ever want to see like open up a weekly blog and see a recolor there that's being sold. I think as the game kind of matures, as they get more costumes out, I think they definitely need to start taking away the recolors from the store and to start putting more costumes that are unique into the store. Now, obviously, you can recycle those and kind of put them into the store, a different week after, whatever, whatever, whatever. But I think when it comes to recolor specifically, those should not be in the store sold for money, point blank. And I'm just gonna be honest about that. I mean, it sucks because like I know there's been so many cases where recolors can definitely be kind of cool because I've heard stories before of people who buy a color and then the next week the recolors in the store and they're like, oh shit, I should have bought that one. I mean, so it seems that in some cases it's working, but truthfully to be told, I just don't think recolors are something that should be sold for money. Period. And that is my thought on recolors. So let's talk about customization. So this definitely ties into costumes a little bit here, but this might actually be tough because of Marvel approval. But if Marvel approved this, one of the things I would love to see for these characters are customizing the small things about the costumes that we use as players. So whether it's the hair, the beard, the weapons, or the shield, I think this could go a long way to help making these characters feel like they're ours to play. Now, if you guys remember, one of the big advertising points and one of the big talking points before the game came out was that through your skill builds, you're going to make these characters feel like your own, right? Everyone's going to have a unique build for the most part. But because of that, it's going to feel like your Kamala, your Captain America, your Black Widow, so on and so forth. And I think customizing and customization can go a long way into helping you kind of create that attachment to the character you're playing, right? It's very different from playing a character that you've molded, that's a faceless character, and that you've kind of created and kind of built and done your work with. So I think in terms of kind of creating that emotional attachment to these characters, aside from, oh, these are like very famous characters we all love, I think, being able to customize it and create, a Thor with Stormbreaker, or, having the stealth, costume for Captain America with the stealth shield could be cool. I definitely think they need to start looking at how do we kind of make these characters feel like the player's characters instead of just a character, right? And costumes do help with that, right? You're playing your Thor in the unworthy costume, but I think why can't we take that the next step, right? So maybe that's something that they could talk to Marvel about, and maybe Marvel might sign off of it, maybe Marvel doesn't, right? But I think it's definitely worth a look to see if that's something that's able to be implemented in 2021. All right, so next and finally, the last thing on the list here is the war table UI, and this might be a different one than you guys were predicting here. But one of the things I'd like to see is the war table UI cleaned up as more characters get released. I see what they're going with in kind of splitting up the operations, and they're trying to keep it separate. But in keeping it separate, you're creating this very what's the word I'm looking for? They're creating a very much so like just a very busy menu. Whether you're on the war table itself and you're going through the different regions with all the different pop-ups, or you're hitting the button or whatever to go to the operation screen, then you already have like 3 different or 4 different operations. And all I'm thinking about is like the end of next year when you have presumably, hopefully 4 or 5 characters released. You have all these different operations you can play and to pick from. I'm just thinking about, a new player coming into the game, and having to navigate their way around these menus, right? As someone who's been playing the game, and you guys will probably, be hopefully still be playing the game, next year. You'll kind of learn these menus as you kind of go along here, but it will eventually get to the point where it's kind of going to look messy. It's going to look cluttered. So I'd like to see them kind of tackle the war table UI and to really figure out a way to streamline and to clean it up. Hopefully, just to make it look nice eventually, right? My biggest fear is that as new characters get released, the war table, the operations menu, it's all going to look very, very ugly and it's going to look very, very cluttered. And hopefully that's not the case, but we'll have to wait and see. That's honestly like something that I've talked in private about. Is that's my fear of the kind of the menu situation, and hopefully they kind of rectify that. And yeah, I mean, that's it, guys. So with that being said, guys, that is it for the video today. I just want to say thank you guys for making it all the way through the end here with me. I know sometimes I get a little rambly, but I'm just trying to get my thoughts out. And even though I have notes here, sometimes I just off the top of my head. But I appreciate you guys for all the support for the last few months here, and appreciate you guys watching the video. If you're new to the channel and you like this kind of content, make sure you hit the subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment, whatever you got to do, man. I appreciate all the support, all the love, and let me know in the comments below what kind of stuff you're looking forward to in the game. Let me know, one thing that you think is going to happen. Let me know one thing that you wish is going to happen. Give me something that's very grounded. Give me something that's not so grounded. I'd like to think everything I kind of talked about is very grounded. I don't think there's any pie in the sky sort of scenarios here, but hey, maybe there is. You never really know until you get told no. I guess that's a way to look at it, right? But with that being said, guys, I'm gonna go. Thank you guys so much for an amazing 2020. I will see you guys in 2021. It's like 2 days away. And with that being said, thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have enjoyed your holiday season. Hope you guys enjoy your new year as safe as you can. And I will see you guys next time on Assemble. It's been High Ruler. It's been a blast. I'll see you guys later.